Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to dive into something pretty powerful and honestly kind of human,
Yeah.
straight from those early chapters of Genesis. We're focusing on like this key family moment with Isaac and his sons.
Yeah, a really simple transaction on the surface, but it's
hmm
loaded with all these implications, kind of a cautionary tale that's still relevant today.
For sure. So we're looking at Genesis 25, verses 29 through 34, the part where Esau trades away his birthright to Jacob, and it's all for a bowl of stew. It's like picture Esau totally wiped out after being in the fields all day, comes home and smells Jacob cooking. He's so hungry, like starving, that he just has to have some of that stew right then and there. And Jacob, always the clever one, sees his chance.
It's a really primal scene when you think about it. Esau's driven purely by his physical needs in that moment. He asks for the stew, and Jacob just goes for it. First, sell me your birthright. What's crazy is Esau's answer. Look, I'm about to die. What good is the birthright to me? And just like that, for a bowl of red stew, he swears an oath and gives up something unbelievably valuable.
Yeah, and that brings us to the main question we're tackling in this deep dive. What can we learn from Esau's impulsive choice? There are some big lessons here, right?
Yeah.
So first, let's break down what this birthright even means. It wasn't just about who got the family stuff, right?
Right. It was so much bigger than material possessions. The birthright had this huge symbolic meaning. It was basically about who held spiritual leadership in the family. The person with the birthright was often responsible for keeping family traditions alive and guiding their relatives in matters of faith.
So it wasn't just a title, it was a real position with responsibilities. And even more importantly, wasn't it tied to the promises that God had made?
Exactly. The birthright was super connected to those covenant blessings God promised to Abraham and then to Isaac. Those are huge promises, a great nation coming from them, and most importantly, the line of descendants leading to the Messiah. For Esau, as the firstborn son, this birthright was his. He was meant to continue that divine lineage, which was an amazing privilege, but also a huge responsibility.
Wow, that really changes things. It wasn't just about family status, it was about being part of this incredible chain of promises. And that makes Esau's reaction even more. Well, let's look at where his head's at. He's tired, hungry, we've all been there, but his response is so instant. No thinking about the future, I'm famished, and then, bam, look, I'm about to die. What good is the birthright to me? It almost feels like he's exaggerating because he's so caught up in the moment.
It definitely shows how those urgent, immediate needs can completely block out any thoughts of the future. His question, what good is the birthright to me when he's that hungry, really shows how we tend to downplay future rewards when we're desperate for relief right now. It's like how we make bad financial decisions or health choices sometimes. Just for a bowl of red stew, as the scripture says, he willingly traded away his inheritance and his place in God's plan. And the fact that he made an oath just shows how serious and final his decision was. It wasn't just a passing thought, it was a real commitment.
And this is where it gets really interesting for us because it highlights something fundamental about human nature. We often choose what's right in front of us, what satisfies us right now, over things that might be way more valuable in the future or even have eternal meaning. It makes you think. How often are we making those kinds of trades in our own lives?
It's a constant struggle, isn't it? We're always faced with choices where we're tempted by instant gratification and the long-term benefits seem far off or less real. Esau's story is a powerful reminder to really think about what our immediate desires are costing us. What are our bowls of stew that we might be trading for something far more important?
Yeah, it really makes you think. It makes you think about those times you might have taken the easy way out, the quick fix, even when you knew deep down it wasn't the best choice for the long run. And this happens in so many ways. Like maybe we buy something we don't need instead of saving for the future. Or maybe we compromise our values just to fit in or get ahead.
Exactly. And if we look at the bigger picture, Esau didn't just make a personal mistake. He showed a lack of responsibility and disrespect for what he had been given. As the firstborn son, he was in a special position, a sacred trust, as the source calls it.
The source doesn't hold back, does it? It straight up says, so Esau despised his birthright. That's a strong word, despised. It's not just that he made a bad call in the moment. It implies that he didn't value what he had at all.
It means he totally failed to appreciate his inheritance and the responsibilities that came with being the firstborn. He didn't honor the gifts God had given him and the role he was meant to play in God's plan. There's a huge lesson here about being grateful and recognizing the potential and the importance of the things we receive.
I found it really interesting that the source specifically talks to parents about this. It emphasizes how crucial it is to teach kids to value those lasting blessings. faith, integrity, strong relationships over those fleeting, immediate desires. It's about helping them understand that the choices they make now will shape their future, especially their spiritual journey.
That's so important. It's about raising kids with a long-term perspective, one that goes beyond just this moment and recognizes the value of building character and growing spiritually. It's about teaching them that delaying gratification isn't about missing out. It's often the way to find greater fulfillment and purpose in life.
And that brings it back to you, our listener. Even if you're not a parent right now, the principle still applies. We're constantly making choices that prioritize some things over others. So let's take a moment to think about this. Where in our own lives are we tempted to trade something truly valuable for something temporary?
This is where that ancient story becomes so relevant to us today. Like the source suggests, we might be focusing so much on getting rich that we neglect our inner lives or our relationships. Maybe we chase financial success so hard that we forget about our spiritual well-being, our families, or even our own mental and emotional health. Or maybe we choose the easy path, the comfortable option, even though it pulls us away from the commitments and values that really matter, our core beliefs, our community involvement, or our pursuit of a purpose beyond ourselves.
It's often in those little compromises, those seemingly insignificant bowls of stew, that we slowly stray from a path that could be much more meaningful and fulfilling. The story of Esau is this stark, unforgettable reminder that a moment of weakness can have long-lasting consequences.
Definitely. And it pushes us to really look at our priorities. What do we truly value? What are we, maybe without realizing it, willing to sacrifice just to get what we want right now? Esau's story, even though it's from so long ago, speaks directly to the struggles we face today in a world where instant gratification is everywhere.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, the message boils down to this. It's so important to value the eternal over the temporary. Esau's impulsive action is this powerful, even tragic example of what can happen when we lose sight of the bigger picture and just focus on what we want in this moment.
It challenges us to think about our own bowls of stew, those things that tempt us, those little indulgences or compromises that might actually be blocking us from the deeper, more lasting blessings in life. What are those things that make us want to trade away something truly valuable for something that won't last?
And before we go, here's one final thought. We've talked about this idea of a birthright in its original historical and religious context. But how might that concept and inheritance, unique opportunities and responsibilities apply to your life today, maybe even outside of religion? What valuable inheritances, knowledge, skills, relationships, or even just time are you maybe undervaluing or tempted to trade for something that feels good now but won't matter as much later? It's definitely something to think about.